Hey guys, welcome to Fantasy Fluent Live. Every week I'm going to be coming to you and recording this episode, taking your questions about NFL fantasy football and telling you some sleepers, who to start, who to sit this week, going through each NFL matchup for the week. So I'm going to start by taking a few of your questions. The first one comes from Johnny K. The Tampa offense looks like New England. Will it look like New England's offense? Well, if you remember from the most recent podcast, we talked with Coach Hugh Jackson, and he said Bruce Arians is more likely to change the way that he plays his offense more so than he's going to make Tom Brady change for his. So I'm assuming you're going to see similar things to the Patriots offense with kind of a Tampa Bay flair to it. So there's kind of a follow-up question to that, asking about, we're going to see the three backs, so Jones, McCoy, and Fournette. Not a great thing for fantasy, probably good for Tampa Bay because neither one of those guys is really a lead back that can play all day and take 25, 30 carries a game. So good for real football, not so good for fantasy. Expect Jones, though, to get the early start. So if you have to play a Tampa Bay running back early in your fantasy leagues, look for McCoy and Jones to really be splitting the carries in the first couple of weeks, with Fournette, depending on how in shape he is, being able to kind of take over that load moving forward. Next question. So the Jags backfield is a mess. Yeah, I think the whole Jags team is a mess. So between Robinson, Ozzie, and Thompson, who is going to get the carries, right? I think this team's going to be behind in most games. So if anything, you probably want to look at from a fantasy perspective, you're going to want to look at their wide receivers because they're going to be playing from behind. Gardner Minshew is going to have to throw the ball quite a bit. And they're obviously not very happy with what they have at running back because they had DeVante Freeman in, and they were unable to come to an agreement with him. However, they're clearly looking to add another running back. So not really sure what's going on with that Jags backfield. I would stay away from them. I wouldn't even say if you have to pick one, take this one. I'd stay away from them. Although maybe Thompson has some PPR value if you're playing in a PPR league. Next one. Who do you like, Drew Lock or Joe Burrow? Okay. So again, it's going to depend on from a football standpoint versus from a fantasy standpoint. So I like Drew Lock better this season. I think the Denver Broncos have a better opportunity to win some games. From our preseason picks, we had Denver fighting for that last wild card spot in their division with Oakland and with Tennessee. As you know, I picked the Colts to win their division. So Tennessee, Oakland, and Denver. So from a football standpoint, I like Drew Lock better. From a fantasy standpoint, I like Joe Burrow. I actually have him. I just did a draft right before we started this, and I picked him up as kind of my quarterback number 2. I was fortunate enough to pick up Patrick Mahomes in one of the later rounds. So I went with Patrick Mahomes and then Joe Burrow as my backup. The reason I like him, obviously, is if you have a healthy A.J. Green and you have Tyler Boyd and John Ross, again, this is another team that's not going to win a lot of games. Their defense is suspect. So again, they'll be playing from behind, throwing the ball a lot, which is great for fantasy, especially if you're in PPR leagues. Better in fantasy, Tom Brady or Ben Roethlisberger? It depends what you're looking for. So I think Tom Brady has a higher floor. So he's going to be more consistent. He's got a lot of weapons, obviously, in Tampa Bay between Evans and Godwin, the tight ends. Obviously, Gronk is there, Howard, Brate. So he's got a lot of weapons, the three backs that we already mentioned. So he's got a better offense, and they're going to be a high-powered offense. They're going to score a lot of points. So that's really good for Brady in terms of his floor. Are you going to get those 400-yard, 5-touchdown games out of Brady? Probably not. So his ceiling is going to be a little bit lower. Whereas with Ben coming back off injury, do we really know what he's going to give us. Well, if he's healthy, right, Ben's going to probably be similar to the Ben of the past, where he's got some big plays. He's got some big games where he throws for 450 yards, again, 5 touchdowns, 6 touchdowns. But he's also going to throw you in a dud every kind of other road game where he's not going to give you any fantasy points, and he's going to throw you 4 picks. So again, if you're looking for a more consistent floor, that's going to be Tom Brady. If you're looking for kind of a QB, because you can pick Roethlisberger up at the end of your drafts if you're drafting. In a lot of cases, he's actually on the waiver wire, so you can pick him up and kind of throw him in from a week to week if you're streaming quarterbacks, or if you have a bye week later on in the season. Darius Slayton or Sterling Shepard. That's a good one. That's a really good one because, again, the Giants are another team that's not going to be great, although we're going to talk about Daniel Jones here in a minute. And again, they're going to be playing from behind. They're going to be throwing the ball a lot. And I actually like Darius Slayton a little bit better. He's a few inches taller. He's a bigger body than Sterling Shepard. I think he's going to turn out to be more of a number one in fantasy in that offense than Sterling Shepard. Shepard obviously has some injury concerns. So yeah, I like Slayton. If again, depending on where you get him in the draft, I wouldn't go reaching for him. But if you need a kind of wide receiver, again, for a fill-in, for a streamer, that type of thing, Darius Slayton, definitely a good pickup. DK Metcalf, we've got a lot of wide receivers, a lot of wide receiver questions. So we got DK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett. So this is going to be very dependent on what kind of league you're playing in. So if you're in a standard league versus a PPR, I like Tyler Lockett because he's got some big playability. Him and Russell Wilson have a good chemistry. Again, though, he's coming off an injury. He's got some concussion concerns. And I just think DK Metcalf is a beast. I've drafted him, I think, in 2 or 3 of my leagues because I think this is going to be his breakout season. I talked about it again on the podcast a couple of weeks ago. I really like DK Metcalf this season. Gronk. Can Gronk return to form? No. Short answer is no, but I don't think he's going to get the opportunity either. Obviously, health is going to be a concern, his conditioning, right, after taking some time away from the NFL. But also, he's dealing with a pretty crowded tight end core there between him, O.J. Howard, and Cameron Brate. There's a lot of tight ends. And again, in that offense, a lot of mouths to feed too, right? You still got to get Godwin his and Evans his. Again, the running backs that we talked about. So there's a lot of fantasy points I think will come out of the team collectively. But from week to week, it's kind of going to be frustrating, like the Patriots offense of years past, where Brady spreads the ball around. He doesn't kind of go to one person all the time. So he's going to be a tough guy to take on a week in, week out basis. Running back QB sets. Okay, so the question is, would you take a quarterback and a running back from the same team? Normally, I say no. I'm not a huge fan of that, although I am a fan of taking a QB tight end, QB wide receiver. Sometimes, I guess, depending on the offense. QB running back scares me only because you're expecting a lot of offense from the team. And now, again, I got to say this too. If it's a running back that catches like as a receiving running back out of the backfield, then yes, right? Because that's the opportunity. However, typically running backs cut into quarterbacks' touchdowns if they're running it in from short yardage, or quarterbacks, obviously, if they're big play quarterbacks, cut into running backs' touchdown opportunities. So that's one I kind of try to shy away from as much as possible. So we have another question that just came in. David Johnson makes an impact. Comeback year? I'm done with David Johnson. I'm sorry. I don't like Houston's offense. Again, I think they're going to be in a bunch of shootouts where they're going to be down. I don't think he's going to return to that David Johnson that we remember. I think he lived for 3 years in fantasy from that huge season that he had and never really got anywhere near that again. Obviously, he's been dealing with injuries as well. So David Johnson, probably a no for me. And then the last one, Kyler Murray. Will this be the Kyler Murray breakout year? He's only in his second year, so I would say yeah, compared to last year. I think he's going to put up some big numbers. He's got a great group of receivers, right? Now that he has DeAndre Hopkins, obviously Larry Fitzgerald, who's like 187, yet he can still, beat you off. He can still get separation and catch a lot of balls. And I think the one receiver that we've forgotten a lot about in that Arizona offense has been Christian Kirk, right? A lot of hype last year, didn't live up to the hype. And this is one of those sneaky wide receivers where, we forget about him a little bit. We drafted him, not that you drafted him high last year, but he came in with a lot of hype last year and he kind of disappointed. And now everyone kind of forgot about him. And now here's his opportunity to really jump in and make a difference. So that's it for our questions that we have that came in. And now we've got last part of the show. We're going to talk about the start 'em and sit 'em. So I've got two players from the quarterback, running back, and from wide receivers. We're going to go start, sit, sleeper, bust. So we got first start is, we just talked about him a little earlier with all his weapons, Ben Roethlisberger, a return of a healthy Roethlisberger. The Pittsburgh defense was really, really good last year. And I think we forgot how good the offense could be when Ben Roethlisberger is the quarterback versus Mason Rudolph. He still has some weapons in Juju and Washington, and now I think Deontay Johnson is going to have a big season. James Conner, if healthy, can obviously create some play action for Ben, which he thrives on. So I think, and look for Ben against this New York Giants defense to have a big day this week. The next one is Josh Allen. So again, in a couple of my leagues, Josh Allen is my quarterback when I went no QB until pretty late. And you got to like Josh Allen because he gives you something that a lot of quarterbacks can't. He's going to give you some rushing touchdowns. So I don't expect his receiving will be better, I think, with the addition of Stephon Diggs. But I still think his biggest value is going to be with his feet. So Josh Allen, and again, against the Jets defense, I like anybody against the Jets right now. Sit-ems for quarterback. So I mentioned Daniel Jones, and I mentioned I think he's going to be one of those sleeper QBs that's going to surprise a lot of people. I picked him up in a couple of leagues as well. I think Daniel Jones is going to have a really good fantasy season, although I don't think the Giants are necessarily going to have a good good real season. But this first week one against Pittsburgh's defense is solid. And I'm not going to go with a quarterback that's kind of hasn't shown me enough yet against a really, really good Pittsburgh defense. So I'd stay away from Daniel Jones this week. The other one is Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford is a great conundrum. He was looking like an MVP quarterback last season before the injury. Detroit's record obviously didn't show how good he was playing. Then he gets hurt. And again, people forget about him the second they get hurt. I think, again, Detroit's going to be a team that's going to have to throw the ball a lot. Although I kind of like Swift in the backfield, but still it's going to be a team that's going to have to throw the ball a lot. And when you're throwing the ball against the Bears defense that they're playing in week one with that pass rush, I'd sit Stafford definitely. Then to my sleeper. Okay, I'm really high. I mentioned that I picked the Colts to win their division this year. I'm really high on Phillip Rivers and that Colts offense. So watch for the Colts against the Jags. I think we're giving the Jags defense maybe a little bit too much credit. I think they're going to be a hot mess this year. And you'll see in a lot of these kind of sleeper picks and start-em, sit-ems, I'm picking a lot of players against that Jags defense in week one. So look for Phillip Rivers to have a big day against the Jags. And then my bust alert. So I know I said Kyler Murray a second ago is going to have a good season, and he will. However, it's not going to start in week one against San Francisco. Their defense is too strong. This is going to be a low-scoring game. Expect Murray to kind of struggle a little bit out of the gate. So not probably the week you want to start Kyler Murray. Although for the season, I think he's going to be a good choice at quarterback. To the running backs, you'll notice a trend. Marlon Mack. So all the talk has been about Taylor and what a great running back he's going to be for the Colts. But starting in week one, Mack's going to be the man. Mack's going to get the majority of the touches, and that's going to be your guy again against this Jacksonville defense. I think he's going to go for 100 plus yards and a couple of touchdowns. So look for Marlon Mack as a definite start this week. And then to my Bears, Tariq Cohen. And why not? Because they have no other running backs. They're going to be playing Tariq Cohen. Montgomery's hurt. Cordell Patterson is a wide receiver that they're going to put in the backfield, so he's going to get some touches. So, unfortunately, until Coach Nagy shows me something different, they throw the ball way too much. They abandon the run way too early, and Tariq Cohen's really good out of the backfield. So look for him to not only get rushing attempts, but he's also going to get some passes out of the backfield as well. So look for, especially if you're in a PPR league, look for Tariq Cohen to have a really good day. Sit-ems at the running back. So this is one where this has less to do, with the defense, the New Orleans Saints that he's playing against, and more to do with Leonard Fournette's kind of new to the system. Again, there's 3 running backs there. I just don't think he's going to get the opportunities, at least in week 1, to be a viable option. So if you have Fournette, if you did draft him, although he was on my bust alert when he was still part of the Jags, I still think he might. We have to see how the season plays out a little bit. If you have the space on your bench, keep him. I'd say, but it's going to take a few weeks before we really start seeing a lot of Leonard Fournette. And the other one I talked about, Swift in Detroit. So he's going to have a good season. I think he's a longer kind of project play for your fantasy team. This week, again, against Chicago's defense, I would sit him, and I'd sit him and would not even look at him this week. However, he's going to take over the role of kind of lead back for the Detroit Lions, and that'd be one guy that I would go with moving forward, not this week. Let's see, sleeper. I like this one. Darrell Williams of the Kansas City Chiefs. Yes, I know. Everybody drafted Edwards, Hillier kind of in the first round. I think I did too in one of my leagues. But he's not going to be the guy out of the gate this week. I think Darrell Williams will actually get more touches in week 1 than Hillier does. So look for him kind of as a sneaky flex play in your fantasy leagues. And then my bust. So this is a bust, not just for week 1. I think he's going to be a bust pretty much every week. Although I know he's come into the season looking really strong. Le'Veon Bell is someone who I would stay away from this week. Buffalo's defense is pretty good, but again, not as much to do with their defense as much as I expect this to be a pretty low-scoring game. Justin Bills typically play pretty tight games, and I don't think Le'Veon Bell's. I don't know. For everyone who says he's come into the season looking good, they've also said he also looks like he's lost a step. And for the way that he runs the ball with that kind of hesitation, pause, and then go, if he's actually has lost a step, and I hope he proves me wrong because I loved Le'Veon Bell, but if he's lost a step, then there's no point in having Le'Veon Bell playing on your team. To the wide receivers, and this will be the last set unless we have any more questions, DK Metcalf is my first stardom against the Falcons defense. I think DK Metcalf, you asked earlier, DK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett for the same reasons. I think he's going to really become the number 1. Don't look for Josh Gordon, by the way, in that offense, especially in the first week. It's going to be kind of Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, but I think DK Metcalf has more of an upside this week. And then my other one, I think I've picked every position for this game. T.Y. Hilton as another stardom this week against the Jags. Same thing. I think that defense is in trouble. And look for T.Y. Hilton to have, if he's built up the chemistry that it looks like from some of the training camp videos with Phillip Rivers. Look for T.Y. Hilton to come out of the gate really strong, and hopefully he can stay healthy as well for your fantasy team. Some sit-ems. DeVante Parker for the Dolphins. Don't expect much from anybody from the Dolphins, really, at least at the beginning of the season. And then against this Patriots defense, although they've lost some guys, this is where they're going to hang their hat this year. It's going to be on defense. So, I wouldn't look for DeVante Parker to have a big game. And then the other one for the sit-em for wide receivers, I'll get to your question in 1 second. OBJ. Okay, not because of the off-the-field stuff. We're going to stay away from that as much as possible. But just, again, that Baltimore defense is going to wreak havoc on the Browns in week 1. So look for, stay away from OBJ, at least in week 1 in fantasy. Sleeper. So in that same game, Marquise Brown, I think this is going to be a real breakout season for Marquise Brown in that Baltimore offense. I think they're going to stack the box a little bit more to try and stop Lamar Jackson from killing everybody. He's still going to do it, but to slow down maybe Lamar Jackson from killing them with his feet, and he's going to have to throw the ball a little bit more. And when he does, look for Marquise Brown to be the guy that reaps the benefits. And then for my bust for this week, sorry, Dallas fans, but stay away from Amari Cooper. Going against the Rams defense, Jalen Ramsey is going to lock up Amari Cooper. Now, you might want to look at CeeDee Lamb or Gallup in that game if you have to have a wide receiver from that game, but I would stay away from Amari Cooper. That is a terrible matchup against Jalen Ramsey. So one last question before we let you go for tonight. Marvin Jones will equal the production of Kenny Golladay. This is a Detroit Lions fan, I think, asking a lot of Detroit questions. So no, I don't think Marvin Jones is going to equal the production of Kenny Golladay. However, I do think Marvin Jones is going to be a good, like I said, put him in at the flex depending on matchups. Not this week again against the Bears defense, but I think Marvin Jones will have a good kind of flex opportunities week in, week out, depending on the defense that they're playing. All right, guys, that's it for Fantasy Fluent Live. Send us your questions. We're going to be on every Wednesday at 9:30. Next week, we're going to go through the entire schedule of games and let you know startums and situms for each game and answering your questions. Until next week, are you fluent?